I'm here. I think. Okay, we're going to change subjects about this, but we're going to come back to all of this because we're just begun. There's a lot more. And but once you have that established, it's kind of like the Merkaba. Once you have it established, it's there. And once you get this established, it's there. Now, the rest of it's a lot easier. But the subtleties, this is easier than what we're about to do because the subtleties of what we're going to talk about in the next couple of days are hard to discover for some people. But you'll figure it out. It's okay. So we're now going to talk about a programming of the Merkaba. And I know it's been in the books and everything else like that, but it's truly it's important. And there's been so many misunderstandings and mistakes and not really realizing how it works, etc., that I want to get this crystal clear because it is very useful. Let's put it that way. It's very, very useful. Your Merkaba can do things for you to help you spiritually. It's just like we talked about yesterday when we were removing entities from people and stuff like that. You can use your Merkaba to seal this off. And I mean, once you do, it just takes a moment. And once you do, it's over. I don't care what happens, that they cannot get inside of you after that. Or there's all kinds of other things in the world that we'll talk about in a little bit that with just a 30-second sentence to your Merkaba, it's over. You won't have those problems. And your Merkaba is going to actually ultimately be the key that's going to save you in what's about to come about. Because the magnetic field, which we're going to talk about directly after this, is coming to we are at the point where the changes are taking place, which are a prelude to something that we know what it means. And if you're not in a Merkaba, you will not survive. You can't make it without it. But you have to make a certain program into your Merkaba, or the Merkaba won't work either. You have to actually tell your Merkaba to do something. So let's talk about this stuff for a while. And how many people understand it or feel like they understand it, the programming part? Okay. There was more that didn't understand it than did, I think. We're down to 2 pieces of paper. Well, the first thing that is important to understand is that when someone establishes a Merkaba around themselves, or as a surrogate where you build, or an external Merkaba, external to yourself, when you set these things up, no one in existence can change it. This is both a blessing and a real problem sometimes. All this stuff that's going on in the Bermuda Triangle, which is where you had 7 people create a Merkaba field and then it went out of control, it's causing all kinds of problems, not only here on Earth but other places, because it's as above, so below. Everything's interconnected, and that Merkaba field, that was the reason the Greys came here in the first place, was try to fix that sucker because it's causing so much problems on their planets. And they've tried everything, and there is nothing they can do. They did do one thing that was, I don't know how they did it, but they finally got to what happens in the Bermuda Triangle is whenever the female gets stronger, she starts going faster than the male. That's what I mean by stronger. Then that's when the distortions take place. So they couldn't change the programming, but they somehow influenced the speed ratios. And they keep the male faster than the female. And that was in 1993. To my knowledge, there has not been any distortions in the Bermuda Triangle since 1993. If there is, I'm not aware of it, but it's a I don't know how they did it. Really, I don't know how they did it, but they did do it. And but usually, you just have to know that when you set a program, it's really easy for you to change it, but nobody else can touch it or move it. So to describe programming of Merkaba, I'm going to talk about crystals, because it is a crystal. You are a crystal. Your Merkaba is a crystal. It is a geometrical relationship of energy, just like the same thing that crystals do. And they form very specific patterns. The energy field that's around you happens to be the energy field of creation itself, and it has all possible geometrical relationships within it, without any exceptions whatsoever. It's all in it. It's the total package of everything. It's basically when in the Bible when it said God created man in the man was created in the image. How do they say it? Man is created in the image of God. Okay, it didn't mean that God looks like me or you, because obviously we got black, white, green, and all kinds of people and different appearances. But it is the energy field around us which is the image. And that image is the image literally that every single thing in existence was created through. And if you've got enough time, you could prove it. It might take a while, because there's a lot of possibilities. But crystals have tried to physically create every possibility. And every year we find an average of about 6 new crystals that have never been seen before. Brand new atomic structures no one's ever seen on Earth before. And so it's amazing that they just keep coming up. But there is a finite number of these things. And so if you have a crystal, does anybody have a quartz crystal on there, that a natural one that's not polished, and you don't mind if I touch it? Where is it? Is this Yoda? Oh, wow. We are all safe. Oh, yeah. Oh, perfect. This is fine. This is good. Okay. Hi, little guy. You've probably read all kinds of books, and there's a lot of conflicting ideas about crystals and what they are. And I can just give you my opinions on them, but first of all, they're living beings. They're alive. They're conscious. They're aware of a lot, and a lot of different levels that we're not aware of at all. And they have sex. There's males and female ones. There's male, female, and bisexual. This one is bisexual. It's both male and female at the same time. You can look at you go to the lowest window. That's the lowest window. And you'll see the next one's a little bit higher. Next one's a little bit higher. And there's a spiral going that way. But there's also another one on this side, a little bit higher and a little bit higher. And so you get a spiral going the other way. So you have a male and female crystal at the same time. A lot of them will just have one lower, and it'll just be one spin in one direction or one spin in the other direction. It'll be just male or female. And so they know everything you're thinking. You don't have to say anything to them. All you have to do is look at them or put your attention on them, and they can be on the moon or on the other side of the world or anywhere. It doesn't matter where they are. And if you're familiar with it, if you know that crystal, they know you. And all you have to do is tell it what you want it to do, and it'll do it. It's really that simple with your own Merkaba. You just have to... the only time you don't want to do programming is while you're doing this. That's not a good time because you're stopping it, starting over again. But any other time, and you don't have to think about whether it's sacred or anything else like that. You could be riding a bicycle, eating an ice cream cone, and tell your Merkaba to do something, and it will. It doesn't talk back or anything. It just does it. But there's other things than that. Is how many programs can you put in there? Marcel Vogel he worked with Bell Labs. He was a brilliant person. I met him right before he died. And he was the one that invented this floppy disk for the beginning of computers, of how memory things. He had over 200 major patents in the world. And he spent a lot of time at the end of his life studying crystals because he saw the same thing I did. I did too for many years. A long, long, long time. I did nothing but study crystals almost. And he discovered something that when he told me this, actually he published it in a journal, that I didn't believe him. I just couldn't believe him. It just seemed so outrageous. He said that you could only put as many programs into a quartz crystal as there are faces at the point. So in this case, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, which is what there usually is, but there's not always. There's sometimes 6, there's sometimes 5, sometimes 3, 7. It depends on where it was grown and under what conditions. But usually it's 6, it's hexagonal. And so we did this experiment with the equipment that I was talking about long before. We would focus in on the crystal and tune it into the microwave range. And we put it up on the screen, and then we could see the whole microwave range. And meanwhile, that screen is invisible to me and to an operator over there, and I can't see that. And so I would telepathically talk to this, not visually, with sound, so that the operator didn't know what I was doing. And I would put in a program into the crystal, and really simple, just like love. A real simple program, not complex or anything. It didn't matter how complex it would still do the same thing. The operator's watching the microwave range over there. And sure enough, on a very high range, very, very super short range of the microwave, which is also a very short range anyway, there was a little blimp took place. And so he moved that over, blew that up, and said, do that again. And I did, and another blimp came up over there. And so we started testing it, and I tried to confuse him. Like I would put 3 programs in, take 2 out, and put 2 more in, or something like that. And he could tell me exactly what I did, because he'd see bloom, 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 bloom. They'd be erased. Then bloom, 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 bloom. Whatever I was doing, he could track right with me. He would just write it down and say, well, what you did is you put in 2, you took out 3, you did this, you did. And he was right every single time. We got so fascinated with this that we spent about 5 hours going through this whole thing. But Marcel was right. As soon as you get to 6 programs, if you try to put 7 in, no more blimps. It wouldn't accept any more than that many. But with the human crystal, I was checking this because I wanted to know if this was true with human Merkabas also. But I can't find a limit on the Merkaba. I can't find it at all. I could put 30, 40 programs in there, and it doesn't matter. They're all functioning and working. So I've never been able to discover what the relationship was. But for sure it is true. There's a limit on what you can do with physical crystals and how many. Though those programs, each individual program can be very complex. You can make a very complex program that has many different facets on it, and that's one program and you put it in there. Or you can just say a word like love and make it do that, and it'll do that. But that's all there is to it. It's really that simple. And erasing them it's the same way, like there's books out there that says that you have to, like, to erase programs out of crystals, you have to get them in the moonlight, or you have to put sage around them, or you have to put them in the ocean. There's all these kind of ideas and stuff like that. It's just not true. And scientifically we can prove it. I can just look at the crystal and say erase all programs, and write on the thing, it go flat line instantaneously. You don't have to do, it's all about intention, 100%. What you do with these things, and the same thing with your crystal around you, the Merkaba. You put the program in, it's there, it'll function, it will do what you say it's going to do. The only exception to that is if you're asking it to do something that your higher self, which is mommy daddy kind of, thinks is not good for you somehow, or not safe or something, because the higher self, now that you've made your Merkaba, that's the first thing that the Merkaba does, is you've been sleeping for a really long time. You know, your field is not functioning. And so your higher self, which is just you on another level, after maybe 1,000 years, it kind of goes, well, I'll just wait. You know, but the moment, this instantaneous that your disc goes out like that, your higher self goes, Johnny woke up. and the attention goes straight onto you. They scan your entire life. They see the higher part of you gets it all in a nanosecond, and then turns around immediately and starts changing things in your life. So how many of you first did your Merkaba and you lost your job and a lot of friends left and all kinds of stuff like this? Because they look at this and say, well, here's 25 friends here that are a bad influence. They're gone. Too much money in this person's life. You lose half your money. Not enough in this one. Whomp, you win the... I don't know. But they just make the changes, you know. And usually in the first 30 days, people go, wow, a lot of things happened here. And but when it comes to programming the Merkaba, there probably are certain things that they won't let you do. I don't know what they are. They might let somebody else do those things, but they might not let you do them for some reason, and I can't tell you what it is. And but that's the only exception. Other than that, when I said that only you can program your Merkaba, that is you. It isn't somebody else. It is you, literally. And so your higher self has the ability to program your Merkaba also. And so it's outwardly it's very simple. Now you can get into it in a little more, and you're slowly beginning to see what I'm talking about here in terms of male and female ways of doing things. There are 4 ways that you can program Merkabas. That's male, female, both, and neutral, neither. And those are the 4 parameters that life evolves around. I mean, it's even like in the DNA, you have the 4 nucleic acids, and they actually represent the male, female, both, and neither aspect of it. And that they recombine in sets of 3, creating 64 different codons. But it's all about that same pattern that keeps coming up. I just see it coming up over and over and over and over and over. And so when you program the Merkaba, you can program it from a male point of view, which means it's something you can write down on a piece of paper with steps. You say you do this, 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 and poof, this is what happens. And you can hand the paper to somebody else, and somebody can do it. And it'll be the same no matter who does it. It'll have the same results. But a female way doesn't have logic. It doesn't function through mathematics or geometry. It functions in another kind of way. It's on the curved line, not on a straight line. And so when she does it, if she puts in a female program, she can't tell anybody how to do it, because it won't ever do, probably will never do the same thing again. Female program is constantly morphing and changing. It's constantly changing. It's like a female program, if you're trying to protect yourself, she would just say, well, let God protect me. You know, well, God can do anything. The source of life can do anything. And so now the source of life is protecting her. And so it may change the program if somebody's trying to interfere somehow. We're trying to hurt her somehow. It will just change the program. And the moment they try to alter their program to adapt to your program, they'll change it again to something else. And who knows what it's going to be. It could change to anything. And so that steps of change and how it works will maybe never occur again. And so it's very difficult, if not close to impossible, to beat a female program. I know Russia and the United States were in a sparring match for a long time psychically. You may remember back in the days when they were attacking each other's embassies and things psychically. And that went on for a long time until one of them discovered the female programming and the other one discovered it right directly after that. And it kind of ended it because once they both get into that, you go, well, now what do we do? You can't, and it's all just ideas. So that's the thing about the female program is different. You can't write it on a piece of paper. You can't give it to somebody else and it'll do the same thing. It doesn't work that way. But you can use both at once. You can run both male programs and female programs simultaneously in the same Merkaba or the same crystal too. And I don't run very many programs. I only have a few because I feel like I need to have them, so I do them. And then the other one is the highest form of programming, which is not programming. You just simply don't program. It's from the ancient Chinese way of perceiving things. The greatest armor is nakedness, is total vulnerability is the greatest armor in existence. And it's based upon the understanding that you and the source of life are one. And life is whole, complete, and perfect, exactly as it is. There is nothing wrong. It is evolving in precisely the way that it's supposed to go. And if you really know that, you don't have to get involved with programming at all. And it's the same way with in psychics abilities. It's the same kind of thing. There are male psychic abilities, female psychic abilities, both, and neither. The neither ones are they just you don't have to. You just know the answer. You don't have to. If you're whatever you're trying to do, you just know what it is. Like there's Chinese kids out there who, and they were trying to understand them, who are faster than the fastest supercomputers in the world. They give calculus problems that take supercomputers a half an hour to figure out. And so here's a little kid that's like 8 years old, and they give him this unbelievable program, and they say, okay, go for it. And now the computer goes, and he just writes the answer on the board. Without, just instantaneously writes it out. There was nothing in the middle because they just know. And this is where we're going, but we're not all there yet. But there are human beings that can demonstrate this. To go back to male programming, when I first started doing this, the U.S. military became very afraid of what I was doing in the beginning. They didn't understand what it was. And they were, almost everybody that came through my workshop, when they would leave, they would go back home and black helicopters would just be circling them and projecting electromagnetic fields into them for various reasons, to trying to understand what is happening in various ways. And it was almost everybody, almost practically every single person that went through this. This is in the beginning, and then in the 90s and in there. And they would interfere with my workshops. They'd wait until I got my workshops going, and then they would, as soon as everybody popped their disc out, man, they were, within 15 minutes, they were all over us, every single time. And so I just made a little tiny program in there. Just so I didn't want to stop what they were doing, because I don't have any problem with the U.S. military. But I just didn't want them to interfere with me, so I just simply put a program in that says that my field, I would set up a huge surrogate or external field that would surround everything, which would enclose everybody's fields. And then I just put that the field was invisible, untraceable, and undetectable. I go off all their screens. They can't find me. They don't know where I am. I just like I don't exist. And no matter what they do, they can't find me. And I was only doing that so they wouldn't interfere. And so I could give a class without their interference. And it worked perfect. It will always work perfect. I have a much better relationship with them now. For a long time, they tried to kill me a whole bunch. and none of it worked, and they couldn't figure out why they couldn't kill me. And so then they finally decided that they were going to join me. And I ended up with a class full of military people. All of them. Yes, sir. Huh? They used airplanes, all kinds of things. They went to war against me at one point. They did not, and it was my fault. It wasn't their fault. I admit it was my fault because I got mad for a second. I shouldn't have done that. They came in and I owned a 160-acre place over here, not far away. It was a conference center that would sleep 55 people, and it was a really nice place that we had. And it was given to me as a gift, which when I was done with it, I gave it back to them because I didn't need it anymore. But while we were there, what was it that happened? They started interfering with my workshop. They came in, that's what it was, with their helicopters, these 4 helicopters. And they wouldn't leave for a while. And I, after about 15 times of doing this, I just psychically traced up to one of them, traced back to who the commander that gave him the order, went back further and kept going back through. And I found myself in NORAD in Colorado, and I went down right into the earth through the channels. It set off all these alarms. And I went right into the main control. There's about 7 or 8 generals sitting in there and all these people. And they were just like freaked because they could see me somehow. They got some kind of thing. I don't know what it was. And they knew I was there. And I remember going up to him and says, "Okay, are you the guy that did this?" And he says, "No." And they ended up sending me all the way to Bill Clinton. And he's going, "Well, I didn't understand exactly," or something like that. Well, after that, they just holy cow! They sent in 4 helicopters that parked themselves over our land and would not leave until they ran out of gas, and they'd have 4 more would replace them. And they put all these instruments all around our installation in the mountains around us. And then they came in with these jets that I photographed and sent to someone that I know that knows these things. And he says that those particular jets are nowhere. I can't tell you where they came from, but he says they're so rare. And they have psychic instruments inside of them. They were used in the Desert Storm. If you noticed in the Desert Storm, everybody just, the enemy just became afraid, super fear, and they just sort of gave up and everything. That wasn't because they became afraid, it's because we made them afraid. It was through this waveform technology that they were just developing at that time, and it works. And so they were applying that on us. The only thing is that they missed me by a day. And my group had left, another group had come in, and the group that had come in was just these innocent people. Didn't know. And they were so confused, they were walking around out in the desert with their toothbrushes, mumbling, and they didn't know their names or anything. And so it's a long story, but I've been through this enough. And eventually they finally came and approached me directly, and we had long conversations. And the reason what set them off so much afraid was that from their satellites, you may not know this, but one person, one single individual, and they told me this, puts out the same amount, approximately the same amount of energy as the city of about 15,000 people, the entire city. And they could see you walking around. You make a very bright light on the ground when you're moving around from the satellites. From your Merkaba, yes. They know when you're in your Merkaba. And so, and they're starting to see these all over the world, and then they started fearing, well, if a person puts out this much energy, who are they, and what does this mean? So that's when they all came to a workshop and said, you got to tell us what you're doing. So I did. There's these beams of light. You breathe this way, you do this, and they took it serious. They did. And I wanted them to take it serious. I'm not against my country. I just so anyway, they eventually came in, and once they understood it, they even set up a special thing at Kirkland Air Force Base just for this kind of understanding. And I think it's and where they've taken it, I don't know. You can use this all you want in military, as long as you don't use it offensively. You can only use it defensively. You can use your Merkaba to protect yourself, but you can't kill anybody with it. You can't, because then you kill the love, and the whole thing dies. Russia, and I've been right in the midst of Russia in the government. The government pulled me right in. All 5 levels of the KGB have been to the Flower of Life. All the heads of them. And Putin was very aware of all this, but he didn't go through one of them, but he was very much in support of it. When I went over there, they watched everything I was doing. They eventually brought me into the Kremlin. I was brought right before the National Academy of Sciences for Moscow, was introduced to all of them. And then there's 4 men and 4 women, and the women are just pure psychics. So they came up and were scanning me all over and going in and looking in deep and all these different levels. And finally they said, okay, yeah, he's okay. He's not here to kill us or anything. And they presented to me their secret knowledge of their military. Their military defense system is 100% based on Merkaba science. I don't think that anybody in the world could beat them. If you attacked them, I don't think you could beat them at this point. I don't think it'd be possible. And they were very good. I really want a relationship between the United States and Russia. I think it would be very important for the world if we could ever get to be friends. And I hope this happens someday. There's still a lot of suspicion in Russia for us, and for good reason, because we haven't been very nice in the world in a lot of ways. Yeah.
I guess I'm just wondering how militarily minded people and people that are, they do attack and they are, killing people and things like that. How do they find the divine love to actually experience the Merkaba? I mean, it just seems a little contradictory.
I know. I understand. Well, these, actually the people that went to this, there was nobody under a major that went in there. Not one person. The major was the lowest one, and there were no generals either, though. They were all in between major and lieutenant colonel, or colonel, and all that. And most of them were female. And they were people who were really trying to understand ways of looking at war. Of course, they were looking at protecting the United States, but they were looking at other ways than the normal ways of trying to understand things. And they were seriously doing this. Where they have taken it to this point, I am not exactly sure, because I know I have a lot of friends that have been taken in by the military, and the Navy's the worst of all. And this was the Air Force. And the Air Force, I prefer them over any other ones. And exactly how they are applying this, I don't know, or if they even are applying it. I think that they are mostly trying to understand it more than anything, because they can see what's going on.
And they all had a lot of success with getting their Merkaba fields going, or you're not sure about that?
I don't know about all of them, but I do know some of them I stayed with for a couple years with them, especially this one woman who was a major. And she was very good at it. She understood it. And I wanted them to understand it. So they understood that this was not a threat to the United States or to the world. It's just a natural process of evolution of consciousness rising up to another level. And so if they really want to protect the security of the world and the United States, they need to understand what's happening and not go into fear over it, but just understand it so they can see what is a threat and what is not a threat. At this point, I believe they fully understand it's not a threat. And they also understand what is evolving right now in terms of the earth changes and they're no dummies. They have a very good understanding of what it is. They don't know how to deal with a lot of these things. I mean, just what's going on with the solar flares, which I want to talk about right now. I mean, you've got the entire world in a red alert because of this right now. The whole world is freaked out. Because right now, according to NASA, we have 2 years left. Period. And things are going to, the whole entire world is going to break apart. On every single level that we know, from financial to everything. Absolutely everything. And they're rapidly trying to find answers. Well, the answers lie in this. Because a lot of the stuff that is about to happen, you can't solve technologically. You have to solve with inner technology. And they've got to know, they have to know what this is, or they're not going to make it. If they rely totally on technology, that technology, the sun is about to wipe off technology right off the face of the earth. Now, all computers, by what NASA just announced, that every single computer on Earth well, you could protect it with super Faraday cages. You might be able to protect some information and stuff, and they're trying to find ways. But what they've announced to the world, what NASA has announced, and so has the UK announced, that by 2013, the solar flares are going to be so great that they're going to blow out all of our technology. Every single computer disk in the world was going to be erased. What does that mean? Just think about it. There will be no money, there will be no electricity, there will be no water, there will be no food, there will be no nothing. You'll be on your own in your house. That's it. And that's where it stands right now as of this minute, unless they can figure out what to do. And so we know what to do. We know exactly what to do, but how do you get 7 billion people to do it? Not likely. Well, the Merkaba will keep you alive during all of this, because that if you program the Merkaba, that when that if the magnetic field were to go to zero, which every geomagnetic scientist on Earth believes it's going to happen very soon, and that the poles are going to reverse themselves. When they reverse, when north becomes south and south becomes north, there's a period of time when it goes to zero. And that is the time, that's what happened in Atlantis. And when it did, it erased the memory of every single person there, except for a certain group of people, which were called the Nakals, because they knew all this stuff, and the Ascended Masters, which they're beyond even knowing this stuff. And so everybody just lost their memory. They all died. Very few survived this. They were right back to, how do you make fire? They didn't even know what fire was. You wouldn't even be able to get out of this room because you wouldn't know what a door was. You wouldn't even know what human meant. Anything. It's just your memory is retained by magnetics, very much like a disc. And around every brain cell there's a magnetic sheath around there, and your memory is literally stored in a way that they don't quite understand yet. It's stored in space. A lot of people have memory stored out millions of miles away, not even in their bodies. And it can be stored internally, equivalent to millions of miles away, but it's small. And so there's a lot of things that they don't get, but I believe that we will get this in time. That no, probably the whole world is not going to figure this out, but there's going to be enough people, whatever that amount is, for us all to keep humanity alive and to go forth and go on. And that's my I would like to see every single last person go through. I hope that's true. But the reality is this is probably not true. But if they die, they still won't be harmed. You have 3 things that can happen to you right now, and there's a 4th thing that's about to appear on Earth. Nobody on Earth knows about it yet. But there's you can die, and if you do, you're going to go through normal death, and you're going to end up in 3 overtones of the 4th dimension. It's either the 10th, 11th, or 12th overtone of the 4th dimension. And if you die, you're going to end up in the 10th overtone of the 4th dimension. And if you go through resurrection, where you die, and then as you're dying, and you're still in your body, then you reconstruct your body and bring it with you. Because that's what you have to do, is bring your body with you. This is what's important, this physical body. This is the key to higher consciousness. You might not think so, but it is. This is, and it doesn't matter what kind of condition it's in. It could be missing arms and legs and broken up and in a wheelchair and everything else. I don't care. If it's got a beating heart, you're fine. And so you can go through resurrection, which was demonstrated by Jesus, and that's a possibility. Or you can go through ascension, where you don't actually die. You come to a place where you understand all this stuff. You got it down. You sit down. You say, okay, I've decided that I'm going to leave. You take the 18th breath. Poof. You actually disappear right before somebody's eyes, and you take the body directly without going through the death process in the normal way. There's a 4th way that's about to emerge. I'm kind of excited about it, actually. Nobody's ever done it before, and I don't know what it is. But I know it's here, because the 2 ways of resurrection and ascension are actually connected to alchemy. And in alchemy, there have been 2 ways that you can create gold, and that is through lead into gold or mercury into gold. They're both very toxic ways. They're not very safe to do. They have certain problems associated with them, but they work. And on the 5th day, we'll talk about what that actually means and everything. But a new way has just emerged in the last few months. You can turn silicon into gold, crystal. And it isn't toxic. It's extremely clean. It doesn't have any of the problems that everything else has. And we're doing it right here in Sedona right now. And so I know it's possible, because we're actually holding gold in our hand from doing it. We're taking this and coming up with gold. And so what I'm trying to do is, when we get to the final point, because we've been doing research and development on better and better and better ways, and we finally got it down to this one way that's just so clean and easy and fast that it's amazing. And I don't care about the gold. I'm interested in the chemical reaction that moves through it, because that approximates how human consciousness goes to higher levels of consciousness. And so I feel that very soon, and I feel this will probably be in the next 3 or 4 months, that soon, we'll have a whole new way, another way of getting into higher consciousness, separate from all these other, through different than resurrection or ascension, another way. We'll see. It's either true or not true. We'll find out. But definitely, this part of it's true. Yeah.
Can I protect my daughter of 2 years old in my Merkaba during the shift?
Yes.
Yeah?
It's illegal to activate someone else's Merkaba field throughout the universe, really, because it influences their evolution. As soon as you do that to somebody, they rapidly, whether you guys realize it or not, you're growing really fast right now. Your evolutionary speed is not normal, and you're moving really fast. You're evolving fast, and with what you're about to learn and what you're about to do over the next couple of days, and you start taking that, you're even going to go faster. Things are going to become really clear to you in all kinds of ways, and but it's illegal for people to come from other places like ETs and come here and mess with us. Though there have been so many people that have broken the laws with humanity we have been screwed with for thousands of years. And I don't know, it's just like, oh, it's okay, it's just the humans, do whatever you want, you know. But it's not, you're not supposed to do that stuff. And one of the laws is you can't activate someone's Merkaba field until they do it naturally. However, the one exception is that if you're a mother or a father and you have children and you're in a life and death situation, you can do it. You can't do it to someone you don't know, another kid that you don't know, you can't do it. But you can do it to your own, you can protect your own family. It's the one exception. But it does have an influence on them that will never go away. And whether that's that you got to really consider it, because that might influence them in a way that might not be positive. It's hard to say once you do that.
How old would you recommend the children be before you actually teach them how to do this? At what point do you think that they're mature enough to handle it?
Okay, first of all, this is synthetic. It's normally, if you go back through humankind, no one taught this. Like what we're doing right now, it's never been done before. We arrived at it during Atlantis time through natural means, not through in other words, if you just start a race on a planet, those people are going to figure this stuff out on their own without anybody helping them. It's going to usually take about 150 to 200,000 years, and they will get it. The only reason we've been allowed to do this with you, what we're doing right now, is because we had attained this. A small portion of us had attained that level once before, and because we had attained it before, we were able to get permission from Galactic Center to synthetically do this. But it doesn't usually work. Well, it works about roughly half the time, and half the time it doesn't work. But it's worked. It's already worked. We are definitely going to make it all the way for sure. It's already happened. And there's a part of the human race that has already made it through. That's what we call the Ascended Masters, but it's about 8,000 people. If nobody else made it through, humankind has made it through.
Are they physical?
The Ascended Masters, there's only a few of them that are physical. There's about, out of the 8,000, I think there's about 10 of them that can, and they go back and forth between, they can drop down from the 6th dimension and get into the 4th, and then with great understanding create a physical body. And there's a lot of them. It's like Saint Germain is back on Earth right now, and there's a few others that are probably going to start teaching or whatever they're going to do. I don't know what they're going to do. Saint Germain said that he's going to use his influence. He's the richest man on Earth. There's nobody even close. And so he has this plan having to do with finances of what he's going to do, and I don't know what that is exactly. If I did know, I wouldn't talk about it, but I don't know exactly. And I don't know what that means, why he's doing that. But yes, there are people that are physical, but very few of them. Most people, when they go into the 4th dimension, you can come back to the 3rd. But once you go higher than that, and you become formless, it's really hard to take form on again. It's just like, it's kind of like saying, well, I'm going to become a baby again. It's really hard to do. And so it's not likely.
So, as far as the kids are concerned, if we, as a follow-up to her question, if we activate our children's Merkaba, is that something we do as a surrogate, or we do the breathing for them? Do we teach them how to do it? Is that?
It depends on what level you're on. If you're between 1 and 2 years, you have to do it through this method, and you'd have to do it like a surrogate or an external Merkaba, only using them as their breathing tube as the means. And you can even, I don't know that question for sure. I was going to say you could even program their Merkaba for them, but I actually don't know. That may not be true. And you might have to tell them what to do or say. But the thing is don't worry about your kids. If you got to worry about anybody, worry about yourself and any adults that are your husband or etc., those kind of things. But the children are fine. If they're under puberty, they're fine. They know that the moment this energy starts coming up and they start feeling it, they'll remember. They'll remember and go, oh yeah, I know what to do. You could learn more from them during that time than they can learn from you.
Does the Merkaba actually maintain the magnetic field inside of it, so we don't lose our memory?
It will not do that unless you program it. And so it is a program that I really recommend that you put into your Merkaba now. And that is that if the magnetic fields ever go to zero, then your Merkaba will approximate the Earth's magnetic field, and if it's got to be flowing through your body, which this can do, and if it does that, you will not lose. You won't even feel it. Everybody else will be feeling it and going through all the symptoms and things, but you will be normal. You won't know anything.
What about animals and other races on the planet? How about the animals?
Oh, no problem with it.
Yeah.
The only life form on Earth that we have a problem with is humans. There's no problem with the rest of life.
Okay,
Not
great,
any.
Great.
They all know exactly what to do.
And
even, by the way, even the ones that go extinct, they're not really extinct. They just went fourth dimensional. They're there on another level of existence. They just can't be here. But and maybe someday they may want to come back here. But the potential is still there. But they're fine too. And we've had a lot. We had 30 million species on Earth in the year 1900, approximately. We got about 15 million now. If you were coming from space looking at Earth, you would say it is dying. Because it took hundreds and hundreds of millions of years for these life forms to be developed, and it took less than about 100 and something years to kill it. It's incredible. And it's still dying really, really fast. The people who say there's no environmental problem is like, they're not looking around themselves. It's just like, it's huge. Yeah.
Do you sense that the solar flare problem or the polar shift problem is going to happen before the fourth dimensional shift, or is it possible the Earth will just shift to save humanity? And so we avoid all
that. Right now you have many things going on at once. Environmentally, we are to a point where there could be a shift within 72 hours to an ice age, any second.
Right.
And it's all tied, at this point, it's down to the ocean currents, and they're breaking apart right now. If you look at the Gulf Stream, it's changing shape now. That's the final step. When it starts changing shape, you got a problem. And that is the final step. When that goes through, then the very next thing that happens after that is that you have literally in 72 hours, the clouds back over the sky, and you don't see the sun again for 90,000 years. Not even for a minute. So the thing about the day after tomorrow is a bunch of garbage. A lot of it's true, but the idea that this big superstorm went away and everything's beautiful and we're back together again, no, that's not what happens. That's not the scientific evidence. You don't see the sun again for 90,000 years. That's an average. Sometimes it's as much as 120,000, and sometimes a little shorter, but it averages at 90,000 years. And the average temperature is 50 below zero. That's average. The only place you can really live is right around the equator, pretty much, in any kind of to stay alive, unless you use psychic energy, which was what was done in Helsinki. Every time we go through this, I don't know if you guys ever know what's going on there in Finland, but it's pretty extraordinary. what have been doing for a long time. Because these ice ages are consistent. You have an average of 90,000 years ice age, 10,000 years of warmth, 90,000 years of ice age, 90,000 years of warmth, or 10,000 years of warmth. And we've had 10,000 years of warmth. And so even if there were no human beings on Earth right now, and all the carbon dioxide that we're putting into the air, it just brought it in a little closer, but it would still be happening. It would still coming up very soon. And we would have this. So anyway, we got this ice age that's probably going to happen. However, every 490,000 years it does the exact opposite. And instead of going cold, it just keeps getting hot. And that's almost worse. Because then the average temperature gets up to 130 or something. And it kills everything. But we have other problems, environmental problems. If you want to hear, we've got a lot of environmental problems that nobody will discuss. They won't even talk about them because they're so serious that all we talk about is global warming. But there are a lot of things way worse than that, and nobody wants to talk about them. And there are one simple one is the carbon dioxide that we've been generating over the years. A lot of environmentalists secretly and very quietly have been very concerned about this because the amount that has been released, half of it, 50% of it disappeared. Where did it go? They didn't know where it went. I mean, secretly going, we've got to find this. It's there. Where did it go? And nobody could find it for a long time. And then just a few years ago, they discovered it's in the oceans. The oceans absorbed it. The oceans absorbed it. So then at first they went, yay, the oceans absorbed it. We know where it is. And then they went, wait a minute. And then they took readings. Do you know that the ocean right now has the same carbon dioxide readings that were in our oceans a little more than 100 million years ago? It means that every single thing in the ocean is going to die, except for the things that were there probably 100 million years ago. We won't be able to survive. All the coral reefs are dying. They're all going to go. Everything we know and that's the bottom of the food chain. It means we're going to go. We have a limited time here. We don't know what it means for sure, but we're the top, and so when the bottom goes, we're in trouble. And so, do you hear anything about this? Where do you hear about this? Nobody's talking about this because there is no answer. It's something that's happened, and we can't change it. And so all we can do is just keep talking about global warming and things like that. But there are, and that's only one. There's over 70 environmental issues that are right now that if any one of them break down, the whole world dies. And they're almost all of them are sitting there. The ozone, nobody's talking about the ozone anymore. You think it's getting better? No, it's getting worse and worse and worse. The ozone holes are getting huger. They're starting to happen all over the place. We can't live with that if the ozone disappears because you'll go blind. All the animals will go blind. Everything we won't be able to see. The UVC light makes you go blind, and skin cancer. There's a whole city in South America that they either have to move or everybody has to leave from because they're inside of an ozone hole that won't go away. And you've got indigenous people there with really thick brown skin, and they're still getting burned. They applied to the United Nations. They said, we didn't do this. Could you move our city? But they wouldn't do it because they know there's going to be a lot more of them. And you can go on and on. So that's one thing, is the environmental issues that are huge. And then you have this thing with the pole shift. And science right now is really in denial of this whole thing. What they're talking about now and is just a bunch of garbage. They've actually changed the records just so that they wouldn't have to talk about it. I mean, they've actually gone into the universities and altered the records. I can't believe it, but they did, because we can prove it. We've got the records before and after. We can look at them and, well, this is what it was, and look what it is now. And it's just a bunch of, no, it's not true. Okay, I'm going to try to focus in on one particular area up here right now. I mean, we could go on and on and on and on and on. I could probably go for weeks. But I want to talk about the solar flares, the magnetic field, and the pole shift. And I'm going to try to do it in a kind of concise method. when I was saying that the records have been changed on one issue that we have documented, and that is on the Schumann frequency of the planet. There's a Schumann frequency in the Earth, there's a Schumann frequency above the Earth, and what the Schumann frequency is lightning strikes that are hitting the Earth. How many lightning strikes per second? And over the whole Earth, that's what causes the ringing, the frequency. And the frequency is 7.28 hertz, I think it is. Is that right? It is right? 7.23? Okay, 7.23. I can't remember. It has been so consistent for so long that the military uses it to calibrate their machines and guns and things. And then in the 80s, it started changing, and it started rising. More lightning hitting the Earth. And it went and slowly started getting up. And Greg Braden was mapping with this. He's from Martin Marietta originally, and he's a real scientist, and he was studying this, and he says, wow, this is amazing. And I was working with him. We're really good friends. And we were watching this, and it kept rising. It got up to about 9 point something. I don't remember exactly what it was. Approximately 9.5 hertz. And that's when our government changed all the records, because we were getting the records directly from Berkeley, California, and various places that were watching and recording all of this, and we had them. We could see what they were. And then in a single day, suddenly, all the records were changed. And they said, no, there's been no change. It's 7.28 or 2.3, whatever it is. And we're looking at the records and we go, that's not what this says. And then the Russians and the Germans just said, this is BS, it's not true. That it's still rising. Well, for some reason our government didn't want us to believe that the frequency was rising. And so they decided to make a change in scientific data, which is weird. Which makes me say, what else have they changed? You know. And so in Russia, Russia is now saying that the hertz is approaching 13 hertz right now. And Germany was saying the same thing. That's they agree with that. But we don't. We're still saying, no, there's been no change at all. Okay, well, it's just not true. And so there's a lot of other things that I've realized they've changed in recent times, and that has to do with pole shifts. They really don't want us to know when the pole shifts were. And they've changed the data from what I have read and got in my house and everything else like that. They're now saying the last pole shift was, what did they say now? I think it was 790,000 years ago or something like that is what they're now saying. And that is not true. The last pole shift was about 13,000 years ago, and there was another one about 26,000 years ago. And there's massive data on that. Where is it now? I don't know. It's kind of interesting. This has all happened in the last couple of years, maybe less. But anyway, what I know is that from this is that when there's a pole shift, every single time in the past, and we studied it back for 250 million years, but now they're back about 450 million years. But every time there's a pole shift, there is always, prior to the pole shift, there's always a magnetic pole shift first. And because the magnetics is the key that makes the pole shift. I mean, if you understand the pole shift, for a long time, especially in the 1900s, scientists couldn't understand how a pole shift was even possible. Because, I mean, you've got a gyroscope, big one, the Earth, rotating on an axis. And to change that axis to a new axis, the amount of energy would be unbelievable to move that. I mean, you just take a motorcycle tire going at 60 miles an hour and try to move that. If you could get out beside the road and try to move it, it would be like almost impossible. This is 80 zillion, billion, trillion, zillion tons of moving around an axis. It would take a moon hitting the Earth or something to change an axis. Yet we know that the Earth has had axis shifts many, many, many times. We tracked out at least over 200 times it's happened before, up to 250 million years ago. So we know it's happened, but how can it possibly happen? This is what was going on in the minds of many scientists in the 20th century. And then right toward the end of the 20th century, there was some scientists that figured something out, and then they did it in more than 2 universities. They were able to verify that this was true, and it's now the leading theory, since we've never experienced it before. It's the leading theory now as to how it can happen. And basically, you have the crust of the Earth, which varies from about 20 to 40, 50 kilometers deep or so, which is like an eggshell around here. And then underneath that, you have the mantle. In between the mantle and the crust of the Earth is a rock formation. It's homogeneous over the whole world. And but what's interesting about this rock formation is that they discovered in labs that this particular rock is only rock as long as there's a magnetic field. If the magnetic field goes away for more than 2 weeks, and some scientists say it would take 3 weeks, but 2 or 3 weeks, okay? After 2 or 3 weeks, it turns to a liquid. Literally becomes like oil. It turns to a liquid. And so now you have the crust that could just spin in any direction. So the axis of the Earth and the major mass of the Earth doesn't stop turning exactly as it always has, but the crust could rotate, which would appear to be a new an axis change. And they believe that what is going to do that is at the South Pole, the ice forms off center. There's all kinds of theories. I've listened to about 8 or 9 experts tell me 8 or 9 different things of how this works. They were all pretty good. I don't know which one it is, but it always forms off center. And so you have this huge mass of 2 and 3 miles high of water. It's enough water between this and the North Pole to raise the oceans I think about 235 feet or so. And so if suddenly the surface is free as a spin, there still has to be a force to do it. Well, that mass would move into the spin, and it would move the axis, the appearance of the axis move, relative to where you are relative to the equator would change, except in 2 spots, which is right where there's 2 places would not change. And so they now they believe they understand how it can happen, how it even could happen. But that's all triggered with, it's consistent with the data because it would require that the magnetic poles change first, and then the pole shift. The Mayans are absolutely convinced, and so are the Hopi, that we're going to have a pole shift. To them, it's not a maybe. It's in their calendars. It says it's going to happen, and they believe it. If there was to be a pole shift, forget about everything else. Forget about the Richter scale of 1 to 10. How about 1 to 30? It would be, this is when mountains go up and down and all these kinds of things. If that were to happen, there would probably be very few buildings left on Earth that would be standing, because it would just be too huge. Though this place here has survived it. This place was underwater 3 times, and all these mountains were worn from water, except when you see the white mountains that are above it, those are jagged, those were islands. And this, if you get down and you can see the whole thing, you can see right where the water was. And you can look up on top and see you're down on the bottom. You can see right where it's really clear once you see the picture. But that was 100 million years ago. And this has been through many, many pole shifts, and it's never been inundated with water since then, and it's been very stable. So that's the reason I'm here. Besides, I was told to come here, but I could see why they did. And there's going to be a lot of places. It doesn't really matter where you are. This is not about geographical location. This is all about a heart relationship between you and the earth. And I'll explain that later when we can. Okay. So the magnetic poles, let's just talk about what's happening with this so you can get a really quick picture. It's just an overview of it. The magnetics of the Earth have been stable for a very long time, as far as we know. You can go into the rocks and everything and see exactly what was going on. And about 2,000 years ago, there was a very sharp drop, and the magnetics began to get weaker on the Earth. About 500 years ago, and the Mayans say it was 528 years ago, there was another drop, very steep, and it kept leading down to our modern day times. And then about 45 years ago or so, I'm just guessing approximately, it became a lot worse, and the magnetic field... Did I talk about this already? No? Okay, I wasn't sure. About 45 years ago, the magnetic fields began to wander. The lines don't just go straight line like you see on maps over there. They go like little rivers heading north. They keep changing. And so it's a zigzaggy thing all over the world. The gravity is not the same everywhere. That's another thing. Your weight changes depending on where you are on the Earth. And there's a lot of things that we don't normally talk about, but it's the way it is. And about 45 years ago, that's when the anomalies became so great that we began to watch and see how the dolphins and the whales, for example, began to beach themselves and start coming up, because they use those lines of force to follow their migration lines. And all of a sudden, they're going along, say, the west coast of the United States, and that line usually followed them all down. They usually go down all the way down into the southern oceans, and suddenly the line changed and goes into land, and they just go right up into a beach, following that thing. And this is why they were beaching themselves. And even whales that were 20 miles back would come in and go follow right back onto it. They're following those lines. And then birds all over the world, their migration patterns. They were migrating, but they weren't ending up where their migration was. They were ending up in unknown places because they were following these magnetic lines that are no longer where they used to be. And then in about the middle of the 90s, the difference in the magnetic poles and the true north of where the magnetic spin is on is becoming so great that when airplane liners were coming into land, their compasses were not accurate, and so it was getting dangerous. They had to change all the aeronautical maps of the entire world. And I've got the old ones and the new ones. I can actually show you. You can see that they've all been altered so that they can make that correction. And then recently, 3 months ago or something, you heard about how in Florida they had to change the markings down there because the magnetic poles are moving faster and faster. They've been moving for about 180 years, but they used to move in little tiny bits. Now it's getting bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. Last year was almost 40 miles that it moved, and it's getting bigger. It's now heading into Siberia. It's in Siberia now, actually. It's legally in Siberia. And so the difference in those two, between the spin of the Earth and the magnetic poles of the Earth, you have to look at the internal structure, because the external structure is spinning around one axis, but what causes the magnetic field is the iron core. And the iron core, as the magnetic poles turn, is turning. So you got an internal twist inside the Earth that is causing incredible stress on the tectonic plates and what's in here, which is all these earthquakes that are going. We have increased the global catastrophes. 10 years ago, it was over 500 and something % increase from what was normal. And it's getting worse and worse and worse, as you've noticed lately, because this amazing stress that's inside there. Then in 2003, I believe it was, the geomagnetic scientists of the world, really a whole team of these people there from international, made a movie through NOVA, and they put it on in television, talking about what was going on with the geomagnetic field, because at the South Pole, you have the lines go out at the South Pole, curve around, and what is traditionally thought of is it goes all the way around and comes in the North Pole. That is not what happens. It goes out the North Pole, goes into the equator, goes through, and then goes up, and then one goes down. And so it's a not, they're not accurate on that. And they're, today, at this moment, they're beginning to realize this because there's now 4 magnetic poles, not 2. There's a north one, a south one, and 2 at the equator. And that doesn't work with the existing understanding of what things are. However, it works perfect with Nassim Haramehn's understanding. If you understand the geometries he's using, it makes it crystal clear. And so what's going on at the South Pole is that the lines are going out, and there's holes forming all over down there. They're going out and turning and wrapping right back in. And so that's making the field weaker, even weaker. In 2003, they said that if this continues, that we're going to have a reversal of the poles. The North Pole is going to become south, the South Pole is going to become north, and that this could happen, what they said then, is as early as was within 25 years. Well, at that first one, they said, in the near future. They wouldn't give an exact time. They just said sometime it's going to happen. Well, they didn't know when. Then that was in 2003. Then about 2 or 3 years ago, something like that, these same people came back on the internet because they were so worried about what was going on, and they said, "This is much worse than we thought." And the holes are growing bigger at a faster rate than we thought, and we now predict that this pole shift is going to take place in the next 25 years, much earlier than we thought. Then, only about a little more than a year or so ago, and by the way, they only had 11 days to talk about this, and the government shut them off, took their website down and wouldn't let them discuss it any further. And then they came on just not too long ago, a year or so ago, and said, "This is way worse than we thought. This could happen any minute. These holes are getting huge, and this is going to shut off." And they got 5 days before they were shut off on that one. They wouldn't let them talk about it. And so the situation is getting worse, very, very fast. But in the last few months, something is going on that the world has never really seen before, and nobody knows how to deal with it. And I didn't know this was going to happen either, because when I was told, I knew that this was going to happen, but I didn't know this phase that we're in right now and how it's affecting humankind. I thought that I knew that when it went to 0 after 2 weeks, it will erase your memory if you don't have your Merkaba field around you. I knew that. But what I didn't know is the symptoms that lead up to that, which is we're now into this period of time. For the last 15 years, there's been an increase of people having ringing in their ears. How many people have ringing in their ears in here? Look around you. See how many people this is. Yeah, I know. That's caused by the magnetics. We know that now. Nobody knew what it was going on. They were trying to say it was this or that or what or thing. It's the magnetic field which is causing that. And there's other kinds of symptoms. There's a symptom or a sensation or feeling that there's like a stream of energy coming out of your ears or going into your ears. And there's another one where the inside of your eardrum just won't quit, like tickling. It just won't stop. And another one that's even worse is where you get dizzy all the time. You lose your balance. And it's all associated with that. Memory problems is another one that is associated with that because there's a direct relationship between the magnetics and memory. Also, emotions, physical emotions, are directly caused by the magnetic field. I believe that what's going on in the Arab world right now is because of the incredible magnetics that are happening all over the world, and that their emotions have been so stressed out for so long, they just said, no more. And they're just, but I think that's the trigger that's behind it. And so my wife was working in Russia recently. She just got back. This was about maybe 5 weeks ago when she was there. And she was sat at a table at the Ukraine hotel speaking with this lady from Germany who had just gone, was walking down the street, and suddenly her heart, this is another effect, is on the heart. Her heart just started going faster and faster and faster and faster and faster and faster, and she couldn't do anything. And her ears started getting really weird, and everything started spinning, and she collapsed on the street. And they came and got her in an ambulance, brought her to the hospital. They did a full check on her. And the doctor comes in and says to her, "There's really nothing wrong with you. You're just totally normal. There's nothing wrong with you. What's happening is you just responding to the incredible magnetic field what's going on right now." They said that. If we knew that in the United States, we'd still never tell them that. But they did. And one of the major newspapers, the government allowed this, and they put in a huge article, several pages, telling them of all the symptoms they're finding. It's about 35 different symptoms, mostly with the magnetic memory, heart, balance, all these kinds of things. And that, and telling people that if you feel these symptoms, there's really nothing we know what to do. It's the magnetics of the earth that is causing it. And they're just being frank about it in Russia. They'll probably never say anything here in the United States. They might in Europe, maybe, if it gets obvious enough. But and so I didn't know these symptoms were there, and it means that we are getting really, really close. We really are. We're getting really, really close. The minds are clear. They're saying, "Well, yeah, we're going to have a pole shift here really soon," and so we need to learn how to use our Merkaba fields and all this knowledge so that we don't have these kind of symptoms. Not just the memory loss, but all of these other symptoms that are going in there, because we have to stay completely balanced to be able to do what we're going to do. If you end up having a heart attack because of this, that's not going to help you or the world or anything. And so, and I know there are a lot of people all over the world right now working on this, trying to understand exactly what to do. But this is the thing I want to put across to you. The magnetic field is like, it's like a womb, kind of. It's completely surrounds you and passes through you. And it regulates many things within your body, your emotions, and a lot of stuff that we were talking about. It's tied directly to it. And so we now have to talk about the sunspots and the solar flares, which are solar flares come out of sunspots. And what's going on with this, because this is directly connected to it. You need to understand what's happening. So you can take the action, or whatever action you feel that you need to take. The solar flares, the sun just came out of one of the calmest periods ever seen before ever. We're in solar cycle 24, and we've never seen this before. It was 4 years of absolute silence, just like water just being smooth, bizarre. On Valentine's Day, it was the next class flare went off as the 4th largest one in history, and since then it's just every single day down. The sun has become getting more and more active. Well, the solar flare, what a solar flare is a magnetic pulse from the sun. Okay, it's magnetic in nature. And it takes 8 minutes to get here, and then 20 minutes to get through the atmosphere, and then it instantaneously, and NASA was talking about this, I was reading what they were saying about this, instantaneously it changes the entire magnetic field of the Earth in a second, as fast as a lightning strike. That's what they were saying. And so what happens is you are used to the field being in a certain strength, a certain way, and moving in a certain way wherever you live. You're used to that. And if you, even if you drive a car or anything else like that, it's changing as you go, and you can feel those changes. You're used to all of that. But when a solar flare hits, you're sitting there and just ding, it's instantly something different. It's just like you were just put in another spot in the world, instantaneously, on the other side of the planet or something. And so there's this, another one of the symptoms is people feeling like they're lost, or like something happened and they don't know what it is, because the field changed and they weren't able to adapt to that change. And so that's what we have to learn, is how to adapt these rapid changes. When a solar flare comes in, we can adapt to it. If you can't adapt to the speed at which it's doing it, there is a way that you can program your Merkaba in such a way that when the solar flare hits, it stays the same, and the solar flare goes, it moves the magnetic field to another configuration. Well, instead of going there instantaneously, which causes all kinds of symptoms and problems, you can just take your time. Track back over there, but instead of doing it instantaneously, take a couple weeks or something. Just keep moving in that direction, because you want to go there. This is what we're thinking. This is what everyone I'm working with thinks, that this is probably the best thing. But this has just emerged. The whole world doesn't know how yet to deal with this, but we've got to learn how. I mean, I'm just kind of throwing out a warning out there. We need to understand this, but eventually, what the Mayans are saying is very interesting, and I'm not going to talk about exactly what they do, because I haven't put out enough information. They say how to do this, and what to do about this, and so it's another very simple thing, but I can't talk about it now because we haven't had enough stuff put out there for it to make any sense. So I'm going to come back to this later, of what they say is the answer of how to deal so you don't feel these symptoms of what's going on, because it is dangerous, especially if you're driving a car or an airplane or flying a plane or something like that, even a bicycle for that matter, or a motorcycle. I mean, if suddenly your heart starts going racing and you go unconscious, that's not good. So how many people feel the kind of symptoms that I'm talking? How many people are feeling their heart starting to race a lot? Yeah. All these things very well may not, I mean, you still need to see a doctor and talk to them and everything else like that, but it may not be anything that they can do about this. I just wanted to bring it up because it's very clear right now to me what is going on. I just don't know quite how to respond to this yet. But after I give everything from tomorrow and the next day, then I'm going to come back to this and I'll present what the native people are saying to do. And you can make up your own decision on that. Okay, this has really been the day of the mind. Thinking. I'm so glad we're on the end of this. Okay.
I was just wondering to what extent HARP technology is not having more of an impact in terms of HARP.
Oh, HARP.
Yeah, in terms of the ringing in the ears and all of that, and the artificial manipulation of the magnetic field.
Well, yeah, HARP is, I mean, I haven't been following them for a while. I know what they're doing. I mean, I understand what they're doing to a degree anyway, and the weapon that they're creating from this, and the kinds of things they can do with it. I don't agree with this kind of research. I think it's kind of over the top. This is way more powerful than atomic bombs, and potentially more dangerous.
What they're doing.
What they're doing.
Yeah. So I thought that the ringing in the ears was mostly caused by what they're doing as opposed to natural occurrences in the magnetic field.
Well, the Russians in their research have come up that it's not HARP, it's the magnetic field. And it has been. See, the magnetic field actually has been pretty crazy now for quite at least a solid 30 years. And so I'm leaning more toward the natural response to what this is, though it could be both. I mean, what they're doing is insane. I mean, you talk about evasive on the environment. That's just, I mean, boiling the atmosphere is just incredible that anybody would even consider doing something like that.
And how that can affect our magnetic field as well, our emotions, our thoughts.
I know. It's just amazing. And all the times we shot ourselves in the foot, too, by testing it and not knowing, because it's hard to control and everything else like that. But there are weapons even more dangerous than that are far more controllable that they're using. HARP is a big one of them, but the Russians have some pretty amazing ones. These things have never been used in warfare yet. We don't think, anyway. But I hope we never have to, because there's a lot of stuff going out there that is just, it just goes against everything. It's totally anti-life. It's not even, it's beyond protecting oneself. You would think that people would understand that you just don't do certain things, but they don't. I mean, the Russians are so good at like controlling weather, for example. When I was brought over there, they spent a lot of time talking to me about what Slim and I were doing with the thing. They were following us for years and watching what we were doing. And so they actually gave us their coils and what they were doing and how they were doing it, they were light years ahead of us. And we were using their coils. They let me bring them back to the United States, even some of them. And we were using them, and what would take what Bob Dratch and Slim Sperling were doing, which would take months to achieve, I watched achieve in less than 1 second. You could watch change the entire humidity of the entire state of Arizona in 1 second, and drop it or raise it to just amazingly. And nobody could figure it out. I mean, nobody would even notice, which is what even more is weird, that you've done these things. But I don't know. I don't like all that stuff, but it's going on. And there's all kinds of things that are going on, and there's lots and lots of them. And it's amazing that we're still alive, really. I mean, to me, it just really is. It's amazing that we haven't just blown ourselves up into pieces. There's things that are going on with atomic radiation that is really, really bad, that the world is not aware of at all. And some of these things are so huge that we are right on the edge. If there were atomic war right now, for certain, Earth would not exist at all. We would break apart into little tiny pieces and would be a photon, would be a belt in space. And scientifically, that's been proven now. They know this is true. That's why a lot of the governments are so scared about even a little bit of underground testing like what North Korea is doing. We're so close that it wouldn't take much. And there's other things that are going on with radiation and what it's doing inside the Earth that we don't have any idea or understanding about. We know it's going on, but we don't know what to do with it. There are a lot of positive solutions around radiation that have been developed recently that are really pretty good, especially with like what's going on over there in Japan. There are solutions for what they have going on over there right now, but the people that hold these solutions aren't giving them up. You think they would, but they're not, because it's worth too much money. The solutions are worth several $1 trillion, and so they're not really. They'd probably rather let Japan go than do this. I'm trying to get them to change. We have the solution for a radiation poisoning in the body. Absolutely, 100%, totally solved. You could be totally radiated beyond normal, and solve it completely in just a few days. They know exactly how to not only remove all the radiation out of the body, but solve all the damage that's been done. That's now. And yet, we're not allowed to even talk about it in the United States. And so it's... And also all the half-lives of this has been solved too. The storage banks for radiation, which is like tritium, the water that they're dumping into the ocean. The half-life of that tritium is 16 billion years. That'll be here longer than the Earth exists, probably. But that's now been figured out how to reduce that to 30 days. And that's the longest one. You can take all the forms of radiation that are in take all these dumps that are all over the world, go in there and reduce them to totally harmless and useful atoms. The entire thing in less than, most things are only 6, 7, 8 days. And you can bring them back to totally healthy things with no radiation whatsoever. We know this now, and it's been demonstrated and proven in the world, but they're still not releasing it quite yet. But it's there, and it will happen, hopefully soon. So there's a lot of positive things going on also. It's not just all bad. There's a lot of good stuff that are happening. And so, to me, I can't think about these things too much. And all the conspiracy theories, you can go on for months on all the conspiracy theories that are out there. I just said, no. And I'm just going to go into the light and learn how to do this, because it's the only thing that's going to really matter in the end. All this crazy stuff they're doing on technological ways and science and governments and their politics and all this other stuff and the secret government and everything else, you can have it. I just want to head into that bright light and just keep going forward.
I have a question.
Okay.
It's about 2012 and the Earth.
Yes.
So suppose we activate our Merkaba and breathe our 18th breath and can disappear during the shift. Where do we go now?
When you disappear?
Yes, I mean...
You don't leave the Earth.
But what happens to Earth? Does it stay,
well,
how about the Ice Age or...
these things, the Ice Age, we always go through Ice Ages. It's nothing new. And all these problems are not really problems for the Earth. The Earth can solve all these problems. However, there are certain problems that she's going to have a little trouble with, I know. But she'll work it out. I'm not worried about the Earth or any of the animals or any of the life forms or anything on it. I'm only worried about the humans. And I'm not worried about them anymore, because I know we're going to make it. But what happens is, first of all, there's something going on that the indigenous people are completely unaware of. The Mayans, I sit down with those guys, and yeah, they've got the cycles down pat. They've got them perfect. They know, and they've got all their information now that's coming back to them, just as they prophesized. And we're in the process of doing that right now. They've learned how to go interdimensional, which is one of the primary keys. They're getting exactly on time, doing what they're supposed to be doing, and all things are going well. But what they don't know is there's a cycle that they are not aware of. And I started to talk about this with them, and it just wasn't the right time yet. From a Melchizedek point of view, we know this, and is the reason we came here. It was the only reason we came here, really. Is because of this cycle, and because as it turned out, and this is another long story, and it's not important really, but Earth has become extremely important in this equation. It's become the center of everything, and it doesn't matter how it happened or why, but it did. Normally you would just think of the Earth as just another grain of sand on the beach, but because of certain experiments and things that have happened here, our evolution is going faster than anything anyone's ever seen, ever. Since the beginning of time. We've never seen anything like this. And it's just going up and up and up and up. If you follow the actual curve of our evolution, right now it's almost straight up. And eventually it's leading to something. And what that something is everything is in cycles. The main word is in capital letters and boldface and blinking is the word everything. Everything is in cycles. And it's because everything is created through a sphere. And everything's in cycles, or the flower of life, the cycles that move through it. And this particular universe, which we think has been here kind of forever and will go on forever, no, it won't. It hasn't been here forever. There's a very definite moment when it was created, and there's a very definite moment when it will end. And that cycle comes full cycle during these cycles that the Mayans are speaking about right now at this time. And so so we're coming to the end of a universal cycle. That's what changed everything, like relative to the Greys and the reptiles and their whole view of things, because they thought something totally different. When they discovered this, that's when they started doing the cattle mutilation and the abducting of human beings, because they knew that they would not be able to make it through this. They've been trying for over 3 million years to figure this one out, and they know they can't do it. And so that's why they created a race between us and them. They used their brain, their memory, their wisdom, and everything else that they have, and they put it into a body with our emotional body, and blended the two together so that a Merkaba field could be created. Because what's about to happen is this entire universe, octave of universes, this whole octave of universes, there's more than we know, is going to be end. It's going to be over. And life, all life that's here now, is going to move up to another octave. This is a blessing. This is not a bad thing. This is a really good thing. It's a really amazing thing, really. And we're in the process of that occurring right now. And so when things like pole shifts and magnetic pole shifts and ice ages and all these things are just like, it's not too important compared to when you look at this bigger picture. And the whole universe is aware of this now. Everybody is. And that's why they're here. They focused in on here because they realize this is where the trigger point is taking place. And they all want to be part of it because there aren't very many new things under the sun. New things don't happen very often. Not only the importance of what this is, but just simply anything new doesn't happen very often. And this is brand new. Nobody has ever experienced this before. And it was humankind who experienced it first. We were the first ones. It was ascended masters that I talked about, where the 8,000 went over to this other place, and half of them stayed there, and part of them came back. That was a milestone. It was huge, and so when this cycle, we don't know exactly when it's going to hit. We know it's going to hit sometime inside this window, and we don't know which one's going to hit first, whether it's the ice age, the pole shift, the poles, the ozone going out. I mean, who knows what? Or this one. If this one hits first, I hope it does, because then we won't care about any of that other stuff, because we won't be here. We'll be on another level, heading in another place. We'll be on the earth, but we'll be on the fourth dimensional of the earth. And that's the staging place where and it's all prepared for us, and it's fine, and there's nothing out of balance or wrong on that level of the earth's consciousness. And it's perfect. And so that's my prayer, is that this thing just happen and we get out of here before any of this other stuff happens, because a lot of this other stuff is just painful. It's not, especially a pole shift. Oh my God, you have no idea. It's just like the whole world would look like Haiti. And none of these buildings that we make are prepared for this kind of movement. And so it's up to God. It's up to to all life everywhere. I don't know how it's going to happen, but once this does happen, I do know exactly what's going to happen from there on, because we've already done it, and we know what the experience is, and it's beautiful. As soon as we move over into the fourth dimension, we go there with these bodies. So you're going to be there in this body, but in a world you can't interpret. It's called a baby. You'll be safe. You'll have parents. You'll have a mommy and a daddy, but you will not understand anything. You'll be in colors you've never seen before, ever. You'll be in form that you can't comprehend. You'll be in a world that works in ways that you don't really understand, but you'll get it pretty quickly. And you are creating everything you see. And usually we don't know that at first. It's really advantageous to know it in advance. I'm not kidding. It really is. It really, really, really is. Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Hey, Drunvalo. If there's one thing that we could do, and what would it be to prepare for it? Is it the Merkaba? Is it the psychic ability that you showed us today?
Well, I would rather leave that till we have the full mapping of human consciousness. And then on the last day, once you understand about the heart and the nature of the heart and the power of the heart and what happens when you connect the heart to this and to the Merkaba field and what it means, then there is one really simple thing. It comes down to something so simple that it's kind of silly.
Day 5. And I have actually a few more questions. For the solar flares, you just mentioned just adapt to it and just take your time, right? And you also mentioned that you're going to tell us something else later on. And for the magnetic field, you mentioned do the Merkaba and the pole shift, move to here. Is New Mexico a good spot too? Or
New Mexico is very good, yes, it is. Actually, the Hopi, by the way, are Mayan. A lot of people don't know that. They are literally Mayan, and they came from Guatemala, from the Mayan land down there. And I sat in circle with the Hopi grandfather Eric, who is the historian for the Hopi people, and Don Alejandro, who is the head of the council down there, and listened to them talk, and it was acknowledged that the Hopi are actually Mayan, that a long time ago the Mayans sent the Hopi north. Now the archaeologists think that they came across the Bering Strait and came down that way, and they just laughed. They said it's not true. They remember everything. They even remember the exact trail they came on. He mapped it out. He showed me exactly where they came all the way down through it. But they came here. They were sent here a long time ago to establish themselves because this area, it's not just Sedona, it's the whole Four Corners area. There's 4 mountains. And inside there was the area that was one of the safest places in the world. And during this transition. And so that's one of the primary reasons they were sent here a long time ago.
And the 4 corners are around Sedona.
Well, it's not just, Sedona's in the Four Corners area, barely. But it's San Francisco Peaks is one of them, up in one of those mountains. And I don't remember what the other ones are. There's 4 of them. I think it's, I don't remember. I don't want to say for sure.
I have a calling to go to New Mexico. New Mexico's a thumbs up. I have a calling to go to Santa Fe and Taos. Is that a thumbs up?
Oh, yeah. That's definitely inside the Four Corners area.
Thanks.
Taos is a very good place to be. Taos is. There's other reasons that are kind of secret that I can't fully talk about why they came here, but that is the basic line: is that they were sent here because they knew that the pole shift was going to happen a long time ago. And they knew pretty much exactly when, and then a lot of their records were destroyed, and now they're getting all their records back so they can map exactly when it is. They're in the process of doing that right now. And they're about to have, by the way, the 13 crystal skulls of the Mayans reaching back from Atlantis all the way till now. And they acknowledged they came from Atlantis. They told me face to face, yeah, we know we came from Atlantis. And so did the Hopi say that. They're also from Atlantis because they're from Mayan. Same people, really. And the Grand Itza Mayan Council, I just talked to them about a month ago or so, and they told me that they're going to do the final crystal skull ceremony is going to take place very soon, and which is in October of this year. But the Mayan land used to go up into where the United States was, and they lost that at one point, but it was up in here. And so it sounds funny, but the first ceremony is going to be done in Manhattan. But it was just an island when they when they first did this. And then they're coming through all these various different places. They're coming here also to do a ceremony with the crystal skulls. And then finally they end up in Los Angeles doing the crystal skull ceremony down there. Then when they're done with all of that, they go back to the Yucatan and they're going to do the final ceremony, which is where 13 Mayan shamans each one holding one of these skulls. And then during the ceremony, the living spirit, their human spirits that are in there, will come out of the skull and into the shaman, and the shaman will remember everything that person remembers. And now all of their knowledge comes back to them. And they combine that with other knowledge that they're combining through the return of the codices, which is another part of their prophecy, which is happening right now. And then when they get done with all this, which will probably be early next year, they will remember everything. And then when they speak, they'll speak with authority, because they'll know. But they lost almost all their knowledge, almost everything. They were down to 3 books, 3 codices in the entire world. Okay, I'm being told that I must stop talking. We're running out of time for this thing. So anyway, this was the day of the mind. We had lots of mental things and ideas thrown at you. We will come back later on this and finish this. But tomorrow is the day of the heart. Thank God. So rest your little brains, and it'll be more fun tomorrow, I think. You did it. You finished day 3. Now we can proceed on to day 4, the day of the heart.